The Book of the Secrets of Enoch. This new fragment of early literature came to light through certain manuscripts which were recently found in Russia and Serbia, and so far as yet known has been preserved only in Slavonic. Little is known about its origin except that its present form. It is written somewhere about the beginning of the Christian era. Its final editor was a Greek, and the place of its composition, Egypt. Its value lies in the unquestioned influence which it has exerted on the writers of the New Testament, some of the dark passages of the latter being all but inexplicable without its aid. Although the very knowledge that such a book ever existed was lost for probably 1,200 years, it nevertheless was much used by both Christian and heretic in the early centuries, and forms a most valuable document in the study of the forms of early Christianity. The writing appeals to the reader who thrills to lend wings to his thoughts and fly to mystical realms. Here is a strange dramatization of eternity, with views of creation, anthropology, and ethics. As the world was made in 6 days, so its history would be accomplished in 6,000 years, or 6 million years, and this would be followed by 1,000 years of rest, possibly when the balance of conflicting moral forces has been struck and human life has reached the ideal state. And its close would begin the 8th eternal day, when the time should be no more. Verse 1. An account of the mechanism of the world showing the machinery of the sun and moon in operation, astronomy, and an interesting ancient calendar. A unique account of how Satan was created in chapter 22. There was a wise man, a great artificer, and the Lord conceived love for him and received him, that he would behold the uppermost dwelling, and be an eyewitness of the wise and great and inconceivable and immutable realm of God Almighty, of the very wonderful and glorious and bright and many-eyed station of the Lord's servants, and of the inaccessible throne of the Lord, and of the degrees and manifestations of the incorporeal hosts, and of the ineffable ministration of the multitude of the elements, and of the various apparition and an inexpressible singing of the host of cherubim, and of the boundless light. At that time he said, when my 165th year was completed, I begat my son Methuselah. After this too I lived 200 years, and completed of all the years of my life 365 years. On the first day of the first month I was in my house alone, and was resting on my couch and slept. And when I was asleep, great distress came into my heart, and I was weeping with my eyes in sleep, and I could not understand what this distress was, or what had happened to me. And there appeared to me 2 men, exceedingly big, so I never saw such a thing on earth. Their faces were shining like the sun. Their eyes, too, were like a burning light, and from their lips was fire coming forth, from clothing and singing of various kinds in appearance purple. Their wings were brighter than gold, their hands whiter than snow. They were standing at the head of my couch, and began to call me by my name. And I arose from my sleep, and saw clearly those 2 men standing in front of me. And I saluted them, and was seized with fear, and the appearance of my face was changed from terror. And those men said to me, Have courage, Enoch, do not fear. The eternal God sent us to thee, and lo, thou shalt today ascend with us into heaven. And thou shalt tell thy sons and all the household all that they shall do without thee on earth in thy house. And let no one seek thee till the Lord return thee to them. And I made haste to obey them, and went out from my house, and made the doors, and it was ordered me, and summoned my son Methuselah, and Regem, and Gaidad, and made known to them all the marvels these men had told me. Chapter 2. The instruction, how Enoch instructed his sons. Listen to me, my children. I know not whither I go, or what will befall me. Now therefore, my children, I tell you, turn not from God before the face of the vain, who made not heaven and earth. For these shall perish, and those who worship them. And may the Lord make confident your hearts in the fear of them. And now, my children, let no one think to seek me until the Lord return me to you. Chapter 3. Of Enoch's Assumption, how the angels took him into the first heaven. It came to pass, when Enoch had told his sons, that the angels took him on their wings, and bore him up to the first heaven, and placed him on the clouds. And there I looked, and again I looked higher, and saw the ether, and they placed me on the first heaven, and showed me a very great sea, greater than the earthly sea. Chapter 4. Of the angels ruling the stars. They brought before my face the elders and rulers of the stellar orders, and showed me 200 angels, who rule the stars and their services to the heavens, and fly with their wings, and come round all those who sail. Chapter 5. Of how the angels keep the storehouses of the snow. And here I looked down and saw the treasure houses of the snow, and the angels who kept their terrible storehouses, and the clouds whence they come out and into which they go. Chapter 6. Of the dew and the olive oil and various flowers. They showed me the treasure house of the dew, like oil of the olive, and the appearance of its form, as of all the flowers of the earth, further many angels guarding the treasure house of these things, and how they made to shut and open. Chapter 7. Of how Enoch was taken on to the second heaven. And these men took me and led me up onto the second heaven, and showed me darkness, greater than earthly darkness. And there I saw prisoners hanging, watched, awaiting the great and boundless judgment. And these angels were dark-looking, more than earthly darkness, and incessantly making weeping through all hours. And I said to the men who were with me, Wherefore are these incessantly tortured? They answered me, These are God's apostates, who obeyed not God's commands, but took counsel with their own will, and turned away with their prince, who also is fastened on the fifth heaven. And I felt great pity for them, and they saluted me, and said to me, Man of God, pray for us to the Lord. And I answered to them, Who am I, a mortal man, that I should pray for angels? Who knoweth whither I go, or what shall befall me, or who will pray for me? Chapter 8. Of the assumption of Enoch to the third heaven. And those men took me thence, and led me up unto the third heaven, and placed me there, and I looked downwards, and saw the produce of these places, such as never been known for goodness. And I saw all the sweet flowering trees, and beheld their fruits, which were sweet-smelling, and all the foods borne by them bubbling with fragrant exhalation. And in the midst of all the trees that of the life, in that place wherein the Lord rests, when he goes up into paradise. And this tree is of ineffable goodness and fragrance, and adorned more than every existing thing, and on all sides. It is in form gold-looking and vermilion, and fire-like, and covers all. And it has produce from all fruits. Its root is in the garden at the earth's end, and paradise is between corruptibility and incorruptibility. And 2 springs come out which send forth honey and milk, and their springs send forth oil and wine. And they separate into 4 parts, and go round into quiet course, and go down into the paradise of Eden, between corruptibility and incorruptibility. And thence they go forth along the earth, and have a revolution to their circles, even as other elements. And here there is no unfruitful tree, and every place is blessed. And there are 300 angels very bright, who keep the garden, and with incessant sweet singing and never silent voices serve the Lord throughout all days and hours. And I said, How very sweet is this place! And those men said to me. Chapter 9. The showing of Enoch of the place of the righteous and compassionate. This place, O Enoch, is prepared for the righteous, who endure all manner of offense from those that exasperate their souls, who avert their eyes from iniquity, and make righteous judgment, and give bread to the hungry, and cover the naked with clothing, and raise up the fallen, and help injured orphans, and who walk without fault before the face of the Lord, and serve him alone, and for them is prepared this place for eternal inheritance. Chapter 10. Here they showed Enoch the terrible place in various tortures. And these 2 men led me up onto the northern side, and showed me there a very terrible place. And there were all manners of torture in that place, cruel darkness and unillumined gloom. And there is no light there, but murky fire constantly flameth aloft. And there is a fiery river coming forth, and that whole place is everywhere fire, and everywhere there is frost and ice, thirst and shivering. While the bonds are very cruel, and the angels fearful and merciless, bearing angry weapons, merciless torture. And I said, Woe, woe, how very terrible is this place! And these men said to me, This place, O Enoch, is prepared for those who dishonor God, who on earth practice sin against nature, which is child corruption after the sodomitic fashion, magic-making, enchantment, and devilish witchcraft, and who boast of their wicked deeds, stealing, lies, calumnies, envy, rancor, fornication, murder, and who accursed steal the souls of men, who seeing the poor take away their goods and themselves wax rich, injuring them for other men's goods, who being able to satisfy the empty made the hungering to die, being able to clothe strip the naked, and who knew not their Creator and bowed down to soulless lifelessness, gods who cannot see nor hear, vain gods, who also built hewn images and bowed down to unclean handiwork. For all these is prepared for this place amongst these for eternal inheritance. Chapter 11. Here they took Enoch up unto the fourth heaven, where is the course of sun and moon. Those men took me, and led me up to the fourth heaven, and showed me all the successive goings, and all the rays of the light of the sun and the moon. And I measured their goings, and compared their light, and saw the sun's light is greater than the moon's. Its circle, and the wheels on which it always goes, like a wind going past with very marvelous speed, and day and night it has no rest. Its passage and return are accompanied by 4 great stars, and each star has 100,000 stars, to the right of the sun's wheel, and by 4 to the left, each having under it 1,000 stars, altogether 8,000, issuing with the sun continually. And by day 15 myriads of angels attended, and by night 1,000. And 6 winged ones issue with the angels before the sun's wheel into the fiery flames. And 100 angels kindle the sun and set it alight. Chapter 12. Of the very marvelous elements of the sun. And I looked and saw other flying elements of the sun, whose names are phoenixes, and chalducri, marvelous and wonderful, with feet and tails in the form of a lion, and a crocodile's head. Their appearance is empurpled, like the rainbow. Their size is 900 measures. Their wings are like those of angels. Each has 12, and they attend and accompany the sun, bearing heat and dew, as it is ordered them from God. Thus the sun revolves and goes and rises under the heaven, and its course goes under the earth with the light of its rays incessantly. Chapter 13. The angels took Enoch and placed him in the east at the sun's gate. Those men bore me away to the east and placed me at the sun's gate, where the sun goes forth according to the regulation of the seasons, and the circuit of the month of the whole year, and the number of the hour, day and night. And I saw 6 gates open, each gate having 61 stadia, and 1/4 of 1 stadium, and I measured them truly, and understood their size to be so much, through which the sun goes forth and goes to the west and is made even, and rises throughout all the months, and turns back again from the 6 gates according to the succession of the seasons. Thus the period of the whole year is finished after the return of the 4 seasons. Chapter 14. They took Enoch to the west. And again these men led away to the western parts, and showed me 6 great gates, open corresponding to the eastern gate, opposite to where the sun sets, according to the number of the days, 365 1/4. Thus again it goes down to the western gate, and draws away its light, and greatness of its brightness under the earth. For since the crown of its shining is in heaven with the Lord, and guarded by 400 angels, while the sun goes round on wheel under the earth, and stands 7 great hours in night, and spends half its course under the earth, when it comes to the eastern approach in the 8th hour of the night, it brings its lights, and the crown of shining, and the sun flames forth more than fire. Chapter 15. The elements of the sun, the phoenixes and chalducri, broke into song. Then the elements of the sun, called phoenixes and chalducri, broke into song. Therefore every bird flutter with its wings, rejoicing at the river of light, and they broke into song at the command of the Lord. The giver of the light comes to give brightness to the whole world, and the morning guard takes shape, which is the rays of the sun. And the sun of its earth goes out and receives its brightness to light up the whole face of the earth. And they showed me this calculation of the sun's going. And the gate which it enters, there are the great gates of the computation of the hours of the year. For this reason the sun is a great creation, whose circuit lasts 28 years, and begins again from the beginning. Chapter 16. They took Enoch and again placed him in the east of the course of the moon. These men showed me the other course, that of the moon, 12 great gates, crowned from west to east, by which the moon goes in and out of the customary times. It goes in at the first gate to the western places of the sun, by the first gates, which 31 days exactly, by the second gates, which 31 days exactly, by the third, with 30 days exactly, by the fourth, with 30 days exactly, by the fifth, with 31 days exactly, by the sixth, with 31 days exactly, by the seventh, with 30 days exactly, by the eighth, with 31 days perfectly, by the ninth, with 31 days exactly, by the 10th, with 30 days perfectly, by the 11th, with 31 days exactly, and by the 12th, with 28 days exactly. And it goes through the western gate in the order and number of the eastern, and accomplishes 365 and quarter days of the solar year, while the lunar year has 354. And there are wanting to it 12 days of the solar cycle, which are the lunar epochs of the whole year. Thus, too, the great circle contains 532 years. The quarter of a day is omitted for 3 years. The fourth fulfills it exactly. Therefore they are taken outside of heaven for 3 years, and are not added to the number of days, because they change the time of the years to 2 new months towards completion, to 2 others towards diminution. And when the western gates are finished, it returns and goes to the eastern to the light, and goes thus day and night about the heavenly circles, lower than all circles, swifter than the heavenly wings, and spirits and elements and angels flying. Each angel has 6 wings. It has a 7-fold course in 19 years. Chapter 17. Of the singing of the angels, which it is impossible to describe. In the midst of the heavens I saw armed soldiers, serving the Lord with tympana and organs, with incessant voice, with sweet and incessant voice, and various singing, which it is impossible to describe, and which astonishes every mind. So wonderful and marvelous is the singing of these angels, and I was delighted listening to it. Chapter 18. Of the taking of Enoch on to the 5th heaven. The men took me on to the 5th heaven, and placed me, and there I saw many and countless soldiers, called Gregori, of human appearance, and their size was greater than that of great giants, and their faces withered, and the silence of their mouth perpetual, and there was no service on the 5th heaven. And I said to the men who were with me, Wherefore are these very withered, and their faces melancholy, and their mouths silent? And wherefore is there no service on this heaven? And they said to me, These are the Gregori, who with their prince Satanal rejected the Lord of light, and after them are those who are held in great darkness on the 2nd heaven. And 3 of them went down on the earth from the Lord's throne to the place Hermon, and broke through their vows on the shoulder of the hill Hermon, and saw the daughters of men how good they are, and took to themselves wives, and befouled the earth with their deeds, who in all times in their age made lawlessness and mixing, and giants are born, and marvelous big men in great enmity. And therefore God judged them with great judgment, and they weep for their brethren, and they will be punished on the Lord's great day. And I said to the Gregori, I saw your brethren in their works and their great torments, and I prayed for them. But the Lord has condemned them to be under earth till heaven and earth shall end forever. And I said, Wherefore do you wait, brethren, and do not serve before the Lord's face, and have not put your services before the Lord's face, lest you anger your Lord utterly? And they listened to my admonition, and spoke to the 4 ranks in heaven, and lo, as I stood with these 2 men, 4 trumpets trumpeted, together with great voices, and the Gregori broke into song with one voice, and their voice went up before the Lord pitifully and affectingly. Chapter 19. Of the taking of Enoch on to the 6th heaven. And thence these men took me, and bore me up to the 6th heaven. And there I saw 7 bands of angels, very bright and very glorious, and their faces shining more than the sun shining, glistening, and there is no difference in their faces or behavior or manner of dress. And these makes the orders, and learns the goings of the stars, and the alteration of the moon, or revolution of the sun, and the good government of the world. And when they see evil doing, they make commandments and instructions, and sweet and loud singing, and all songs of praise. These are the archangels who are above angels, measure all life in earth and on heaven, and the angels who are appointed over seasons and years, the angels who are over rivers and sea, and who are over the fruits of the earth, and the angels who are over every grass, giving food to all, to every living thing, and the angels who write all the souls of men and all their deeds, and their lives before the Lord's face. In their midst are 6 phoenixes, and 6 cherubim, and 6 six-winged ones, continually with one voice singing, one voice. And it is not possible to describe their singing, and they rejoice before the Lord at his footstead. Chapter 20. Hence they took Enoch into the 7th heaven. And those 2 men lifted me up thence unto the 7th heaven. And I saw there a very great light, and fiery troops of great archangels, incorporeal forces and dominions, orders and governments, cherubim and seraphim, thrones and many-eyed ones, 9 regiments, the Ionite stations of light. And I became afraid, and began to tremble with great terror. And these men took me, and led me after them, and said to me, Have courage, Enoch, do not fear, and showed me the Lord from afar, sitting on his very high throne. For what is there on the 10th heaven, since the Lord dwells there? On the 10th heaven is God. In the Hebrew tongue he is called Aravat. And all the heavenly troops would come, and stand on the 10 steps according to their rank, and would bow down to the Lord, and would again go to their places in joy and felicity, singing songs in the boundless light with small and tender voices, gloriously serving him.